Okay, well, without further ado, it is a huge schus to welcome Rabbi Glatstein to the podcast. And I know that the normal mahalach is to allow the guests sometimes to say who they are, but I don't think the Rav needs any introduction. But I know that mixas shvachai befanov, that it's still important. I would like to give a short introduction so the audience that doesn't know the Rav, perhaps maybe those in other out-of-town communities yet that the Rav hasn't reached or traveled to yet to inspire, they will know the Rav is a noted Rav of a community in the Five Towns, a best-selling New York Times or best-selling Art Scroll Jewish author with brilliant svarim on halacha and on the Torah, on all of the Mo'adim, it seems. And the Rav is a very sought-after public speaker and encourager of many of the different communities. And besides for the fact that the Rav is a massive Talmud Chacham, besides for that, it seems like the Rav is constantly teaching Torah in many different shiurim. So I just want to begin this podcast. It's really about getting to know the Rav and introduce the Rav to all of the audience, and also to help educate about some of the new technologies that are in the world and the way to harness them and properly use them. Would the Rav speak to how it seems that the Rav has mastered the art of using technology to teach Torah, but kind of repudiating maybe the sides where it can be challenging?
Okay, well, certainly thank you for that introduction, and I appreciate the question, which might be the question of the day. The technology is a tool. It's a tool that has tremendous power. It's a tool that has tremendous force. In some way, it's analogous to the printing press. You know, when the printing press was invented, many religions banned it, but Judaism did not. Judaism embraced it, even though there were certain pitfalls, because now, if there is any information that is antithetical to the Torah, it could be proliferated and disseminated. But nevertheless, the printing press meant that Harbatus HaTorah could be accomplished in an unprecedented way. So the technology that we have today is sort of the printing press amplified, printing press on steroids, if you may. Which means, of course, that the pitfalls are amplified tremendously, and you can't ignore what we call the dark side of the of technology, and you can't ignore the casualties that technology has inflicted on good people in our community. And on the other hand, the amount of Torah that is disseminated today is literally unparalleled. When you talk about, the great Marbitzei Torah, Rabbi Kiva had 24,000 students. Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz, even by account of secular historians, had over 20,000 students. But with the internet today, the entire Jewish world is your Beis Medrash. So but on the other hand, again, the dangers are luring and alluring, and the same way that the Chachamim came and they put gezeros that of yichud, because what we call ein apatrapas arayos, certain temptations, as well-meaning and as righteous as somebody may be, but you can never underestimate the power of the Yetzer Hara. So can you imagine if in the time of Chazal one was not allowed to be in seclusion with somebody of the other gender because of what may occur, then could somebody really use an unfiltered device where the allure might be much stronger, because what's available in the click of a button in one moment, a person couldn't do 50 years ago their whole lifetime. So it's a tool, and it's a tool that requires great caution. And one has to have a lot of respect and honor and deference to the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is a very important person, and he requires great derech eretz. You gotta respect the man, and you gotta show him his kavod. And his kavod means you avoid him at all costs. But on the other hand, it's a tool that you can't ignore. Rav Moshe, I believe it's in his Hakdama to the Dibros Moshe and Baba Kama. He talks about the Gemara in Erevin that a person is obligated to teach as many Talmidim as possible. And Rav Moshe applies it that if a person gives shir to many Talmidim, but he could put the shir into print and reach one or two or a few more Talmidim. So one is required, Galia Masechta, to spread the Torah as much as possible. And even if a person is already a Maggid shir, but if you could spread the word through the written word, then you're required to. And if you could spread the word through the various venues that we have today, which again, many of them are not, there are no advertisements. A person could have a filter device and yet make use of them. Then it's almost, it's criminal not to take advantage of that. How could you not take advantage of that?
It seems like the Rav is implying that once one does take out the whatever could be the dark side, whatever could be the perverse behaviors of it, a filter device, then you're left with, by one click of the button, you could give a shir to 24,000 individuals.
Yeah, and look, for the most part, if you look at the roster of many of the Torah venues that are available online, they're filled with Gedolei Rabbanim and Gedolei Yisrael. I mean,
right.
But I'm not here to start listing names of great Torah personalities today, but the majority of them have a presence in some form. Their shiurim are being disseminated. So it's really a great bracha, and I would just say today it's what we call the stakes are higher. Back in the day, with a book you could influence for bad, you can influence for good. The stakes were higher than when you're just sitting alone in your closet and learning or not. And today the stakes are much higher. A person has to be much more careful because anything they say, if they criticize or speak negatively about some area, a Torah institution, or a particular person, it could cause a lot of harm very quickly. On the other hand, the availability to reach Jews all over the world is really unparalleled, and that aspect of it is being embraced by it seems like the majority of Gedolei Rabbanim.
Personally, I am a consumer of the Rav's Torah in all the different platforms the Rav uses or others enable the Rav to spread the Torah. And is a person have to really ask himself, is there a difference in the choosing of the mahalach to spreading the Torah? What I mean to ask is, meaning it is clear that the Rav as, available, the Torah is available on certain platforms. So are we to say that now we have it, is there certain platforms, the Jewish people seem to embrace certain, ways of consumption on the internet, and certain places we're less excited about? Would the Rav say that there's this palginon, there's this separating of the right way to do it on different platforms?
Look, it's a very delicate question. When the first shiurim that were on tape and available to the public were the shiurim of Rav Avigdor Miller, Zechat Tzaddik Bracha, and you would not have expected that, because Rav Miller was so outspoken about the slightest deviation or what he considered watering down, or what he considered pandering to outside culture. But at the same time, Rav Miller was the first to make use of the available technology.
So the Rav is a Talmud, just to share with the audience. The Rav learned underneath Rabbi Avigdor Miller.
I use that term. I think you have to be honest when you call yourself a Talmud of somebody. I had the privilege when I was learning in yeshiva to seek out Rav Miller for a period of 3 years, where I would go very often to his shul on Shabbos. I would walk a very far distance to hear his shiurim personally, to speak to him by the Shalashudas, to hear a Gemara share from him, and to listen to many of his recordings, reading many of his books. and reading a lot of learning from his Hebrew Sfarim. So I would like to consider, I would consider myself a student, a Talmud, in the sense that, I didn't learn from him formally in a yeshiva, but I spent a number of years and I had many interactions with Rav Miller. And he was a big influence on me. But yeah, I think there does have to be some discretion used in terms of disseminating Torah. In other words, there might be certain platforms that are maybe dedicated, certain, let's say, social media platforms where perhaps it's not the right place to use them as a source of disseminating Torah. If their entire association is for uses that are not educational, but for more social interaction, perhaps
What if I can meet more? What if I could spread more Torah that way? There's million Jews sitting on there that aren't Shomer Shabbos, and now they could know about Shabbos, and they're scrolling through. They're not going to be on, let's just, a Jewish place like maybe more WhatsApp or definitely Torah Anytime. They may not be on there, but they would be on the other platforms. So why shouldn't I be on there? Hire someone to put the Torah on there? Why not?
It's a good question. It's certainly worthy of great analysis. Where is the threshold? At what point do we say that, look, this platform is so associated with ideals and advertisement and attitudes that are so antithetical to the Torah? This platform is so likely to ensnare a person where they're going to be just fall into the bottomless pit, that's not the best place to put your shiurim. For instance, I think a lot of it has to do with derech eretz, and I think a lot of it is not necessarily a matter of halacha or hashkafa, but a certain derech eretz to the standards of one's community. So, for example, 20 years before the shiurim were online, perhaps that wasn't the right time. In other words, if there's a certain attitude in the Jewish world that this is not an arena appropriate for the dissemination of Torah. Now, we always have to balance the idea that Torah has to be learned b'kedusha v'tahara. So obviously, you don't want somebody listening to a shiur, and in the middle of the shiur, there's going to be an advertisement, and there's going to be some kind of inappropriate advertisement. Without getting into the details of the various platforms, but there are some agidei shiur who they'll just put it anywhere, and if an advertisement pops up, so be it. At least the person is learning instead of watching for an hour or something inappropriate. But I opt out if it's going to mean that somebody's going to be exposed to something in middle of the presentation of the shiur. That I don't feel is the right way to disseminate.
Can we say that maybe there's a chiluk, a difference between perhaps maybe just a platform where you really have to choose, you get to choose what you see, as opposed to perhaps some other places that you may be at the beck and call of the platform to see what you see?
Yeah, these are all factors. Mm-hmm. These are all factors.
The Rav is amongst all the different shiurim that the Rav gives, there are, I'm always a bit confused, as the Rav seems to be a master of Sephardic Torah, along with the Musar Mahalach, along with the Chasam Sofer's Mahalach, whatever Mahalach that is, Ashkenazic. I'm not sure if he was Ashkenazic, but I suppose. Is there a specific reason, or the Rav feels connected to those great pasts, or perhaps the Rav can speak to that?
Chazal compare the Torah is a relationship. The Torah, and maybe we'll talk about this more. I know you wanted to talk about some of the more recent technological advancements.
To learn a lot more about the Rav's schedule and learning is a lot more fun and entertaining.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So sure. So Torah is a relationship. A person has to learn with cheshek. There's a famous hashkafa that's brought in the Hakdama of the Eglei Tal, where he talks about that if somebody were to make a neder that they would not get hana from an item of a mitzvah, let's say somebody would take a vow, they wouldn't get any hana from a shofar, you're allowed to blow the shofar. If somebody took a vow that you're not going to get benefit from a pair of tefillin, you're allowed to wear tefillin in the morning, because there's an idea, mitzvahs lab lahenois nitnu. Mitzvahs were not given for your personal pleasure. They're a responsibility that you have to execute. The fact that you're forbidden to get benefit from an item of a mitzvah does not preclude you from using that item to perform a mitzvah. But if somebody says they're not going to get a pleasure from a Torah sefer, from a sefer, they're not allowed to learn from the sefer. And the reason is that Glatstein brings an idea that, as opposed to all mitzvahs, where the mitzvah is just execute the mitzvah of learning is to enjoy it. The mitzvah of meaning, there's no mitzvah to learn the pasuk Zois chukas haTorah. There's no mitzvah to learn it. The mitzvah is to enjoy it. If you're learning without enjoyment, then you're lacking in the fundamental fulfillment of the mitzvah. So a person has to have a relationship with the Torah where, it's not just healthy, but it's critical that a person has interest in learning, because the learning has to be something you enjoy. So,
Rabbi enjoys all the different.
This is I get a particular hana, by learning from Chasam Sofer or the Chidah or the like. It happens to be there may be more specific reasons of those particular chachamim, but that's a general approach.
It is new to me, this idea, because I'm personally someone who's only 26, and 70% of my life I did not enjoy at all the slightest bit of Torah study. The 3,000-year-old Aramaic text didn't exactly go down my 2023 esophagus, to say it in an interesting way. But so then I don't know if a person, if I didn't enjoy the learning. So, I mean, according to this Iglay Tal, I would also imagine that would it not be a mitzvah of Torah study if one doesn't enjoy it? So what to say about that?
The way he says it is that there is something missing in one's study if they don't enjoy it. Now, one doesn't have to have exotic hobbies in Torah for the Torah to be enjoyable to them. Rav Miller would say that if a student doesn't find the learning enjoyable, usually it's the fault of the teacher, where the teacher is not presenting it in a way where the student clearly understands it. But even what we call an old Aramaic text, if a person would put less focus on what the Reb Baruch Ber and the Reb Shimon Shkop, they're of course critical and they're of course very important. But if a person doesn't have the question and answer of the Gemara clear, then they're not yet ready to absorb the subtleties of later discussion. See, I think that what's very missing in our time is that we're rushing to sort of study the most subtle points raised by the what we call the Rosh Yeshivas, and there's a lack of clarity of just like the meat on the potatoes of the sugya, where even before Rabbi Kiva Eger, and Rabbi Kiva Eger is one of the more basic achronim to learn. Person has to have very clear what is the Gemara's question, what is the Gemara's answer, what did the Makshin hold, what did the Gemara hold in the Havamina, what was the Gemara's premise that the Gemara was asking, and how does the Gemara address it. Now let's read Rashi. What is Rashi saying? Why is Rashi saying that? My yeshiva background, I never studied the Chidah when I was in high school, even early base medrash, or the Chasam Sofer.
Where did Rebbe learn in high school?
I learned in Yeshiva Chafetz Chaim in Brooklyn. But I will say that my Rabbeim in high school gave very strong fundamental underpinnings of the way the Gemara, Rashi, Tosfos works. And you can have big lamdanim even, but they haven't gotten that yet. And it's sort of, they're not grounded. See, in order for somebody to develop properly in learning, you can't build the 10th story if you don't have a foundation, if you don't have the Yesod. The Yesod is clarity in the methodology of the Gemara.
Put it on a billboard. Clarity on the methodology of the Gemara. It brings sweetness and success in Torah study.
Sweetness and success. Rav Miller would say, and even just Gemara, just review it. The Stipler writes that until you've learned something 4 times, you haven't even learned it yet. We know from the Gemara in Eruvin of how Moshe Rabbeinu taught the Torah to Klal Yisrael, that Klal Yisrael learned the Torah 4 times. Until you've learned something 4 times, you haven't learned it yet. The 5th time is your first review. So, before a person starts jumping to, the fancy Hakiros and Populim, a person can enjoy their learning if it's not grounded. I'll give you, if somebody's starving and they start with dessert, it's almost, not only is it not nutritional, a person their system becomes uncomfortable. You can't eat a piece of mousse on an empty stomach, But if you had a piece of chicken and potatoes, then the piece of mousse hits the spot. So
beautiful.
A person's learning has to be grounded and founded.
This it could be controversial, but it would be very helpful, I imagine, for some people. There are so many different programs to be able to learn and study, and there are so many mazdikei harabim, people that are trying to enable this because of the busy schedule that everyone has. The goal is always clarity and some consistency in Torah study. Would the Rav speak to perhaps a daily study that would be that the Rav sees to be sustainable for somebody that is looking to learn Gemara and they want to keep it up? Should they be doing what works for them? Should they be trying to push themselves to do a daf a day? Should they be more excited about less, maybe a daf a week, perhaps a little bit per day? Is it just according to Ish Lafi Madregaso? Would the Rav have something to advise us on that?
Yeah, but like I said, Ein Adam Lo Min Ela Ma Sheli B'Chafetz. And even though the Daf Yomi is a speed that's almost incomprehensible, how somebody could really absorb that amount of material in so short a time. But nevertheless, it does seem to work for many people. Many people get feel a very deep connection to Torah because of the daily mechayev of having to learn a daf a day. And for many people, it works for them. But, people who are yeshiva educated and were used to learning in yeshiva in a more thorough way, for those people, they don't necessarily find the Daf Yomi the most meaningful connection to learning. And it should come as no surprise, because if you're learning Daf Yomi, are you ready to take a test on that daf? Even 10 minutes later, do you know the daf? Could you teach it to somebody else? Do you know the Gemara's question? You know the Gemara's answer? If you don't know the Gemara's question, you don't know the Gemara's answer, it didn't really go through your system. Maybe you saw the top of the page, you saw what blot they're learning, you saw the name of the Masechta, maybe even caught the name of the Perek, maybe you heard the word Godasik, Godachis, but I don't know if you could really identify how the Gemara is using it in the question and how the Gemara is using it in the answer. I happen to like Daf HaShavua. Daf HaShavua, we do a blot a week.
Why specifically Daf HaShavua?
I'll tell you, for me, it works. I feel it works for a lot of people who are not learning all day. We learn an Amud, let's say, on a Monday night. We learn Amud Beis on Tuesday night. On Shabbos, we review the blot. And on Sunday, we have a Eon Shir on one pocket on the blot. So, you're learning it at a more reasonable pace. You're reviewing it on Shabbos. And you're picking out something on the blot, a highlight on the blot. And throughout the week, we have many members of the show who review it many, many times.
That was a program I actually enjoyed doing over. I forget, it was one of the Bein Hasamanim to stay connected. Well, it worked, but personally for me, it was hard without I was doing it just following the program without a chabura. It was hard to have that there was an achrayas only weekly and not daily, like the Rav spoke to about Daf Yomi. It's every single day. If unless someone's part of a chabura, sometimes it could be harder.
Yeah,
perhaps.
Look, some people find the Raisa to be
right
to work for them.
Right. So there's literally any program for anything one wants to be involved in. The Rav has a besides for the teaching and the learning of mainstream Gemara learning and Rashi and Tosfos and the Gedolei Rashi Yeshivas, the Rav has a pretty serious, it seems like at least, education effort in the history of the Jewish people. I only know based on the advertisements I see where the Rav is leading a trip to across the world and following around a little bit. But it seems like the Rav has put a significant effort in closing the Gemara to try to help teach and learn history. And I'm wondering if it would be a mitzvah, yes, no. If it is, then it makes sense. Is it not, then why are we closing the Gemara? But obviously it plays a role. So, I mean, a person needs to know their background and their history, I imagine, but how the Rav could define, the knowledge of history and the importance one should put towards it.
Okay, so look, I'm a Rav in a shul. There are people who are Rabbeim in yeshiva. If you're a Rebbe in yeshiva, you're teaching 10 months a year. You're off for 2 months. A Rav, he's working around the clock, 52 weeks a year. You're not off on Shabbat. A Rebbe is teaching yeshiva 5 or 6 days a week. A Rav is teaching 7 days a week. A Rebbe is off for Sukkot. I'm on every day of Sukkot, including Chol Hamoed. So, a Rebbe has a chance to sort of have a change of pace, be it the summer, be it Shabbos, be it Yom Tif. That Shabbos and Yom Tif, that's when I'm under the even more pressure. So this is just a sort of change of pace for me. So you ask is it a mitzvah to go to travel to, let's say we're going to Spain now, we're going to Amsterdam. Last year we went to France. Is it a mitzvah? No. As far as I know, last time I checked the Rambam Sefer HaMitzvahs, that traveling to the European continent was not one of the 613 mitzvahs. And that's why Reb Chaim Kanievsky and Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, I don't think they were not leading trips to Europe during the summer.
I don't believe so.
But on the other hand, there were Torah luminaries who did do a lot of traveling, most notably the Chidah. In fact, the Chidah wrote an entire diary of his travels. I mean, I'm going to go off script. I hope this is okay. I want to show you something. Is that all right?
There's no script. The script is off script.
Okay, so the Chidah wrote a sefer called Magal Tov. Magal Tov is a diary of his travels. Now, the Chidah traveled to collect money for the yeshivas in Eretz Yisrael. But if you read his diary, 99% of it is not him collecting money for the yeshivas in Eretz Yisrael. He's visiting the Tower of London. He's visiting The Hague. He's visiting St. Marco's Square. He's visiting the Tower of Pisa, right? So the Chidah, I don't want to say he visited the Tower of Pisa, but he visited the city of Pisa. He visited many communities, many sites, and clearly the Chidah was a very colorful personality, and the Chidah had an interest in seeing these places. So to say that it's a mitzvah to travel, no, it's not one of the classic 613 mitzvahs, but the Chidah was certainly a great traveler. You have Gedolim like the Kaftar V'Ferach, Rav Ashturi HaParchi, who was a traveler for the sake of mapping out the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael for his Sefer Kaftar V'Ferach. You had a great Jewish traveler, Rabbi Yosef Schwartz, who traveled the length and breadth of Eretz Yisrael for the purpose of studying Zmanim and Netzach Hama. You had a traveler, Rav Binyamin of Todila. So you will say it's not the traditional path that you're going to tell, that if you want to be a good Jew, you must go on Rabbi Glatstein's trips. As much as I would like to say,
but the audience should.
Obviously, everyone listening to your program should come on my trip.
Yes, 100%. Right?
And I'll give you the number, and
if they buy now, then yeah.
But it's not obligatory to travel. But you see that there were great people who dedicated their entire life to learning of Torah, and of course would not just to engage in any kind of frivolity. Nevertheless, did spend a lot of time traveling. So I'll tell you what it means to me. The majority of my time I'm preparing shiurim on a vast array of subjects from the entire gamut of, Sifrei Yisrael, from Ashkenazic Gedolim, Sephardic Gedolim,
Mishnah, Gemara, Halacha. Right? Yes.
Yeah, and you learn the Mishnah Berurah. So Mishnah Berurah quotes many Achronim, and you think you're familiar with them, but I'll give you just a quick example. I wanted to go to the city of Lemberg. In Lemberg is you have buried the Taz, the Sma, the Shalom Eshiv, the Yeshuas Yaakov. They're all buried in Lemberg. And I wanted to go there. I had a connection to the Shalom Eshiv, and I wanted to be at their kever. Why? People say, why? Why are you going to the kever? Is it you want to daven there? Do you feel that you need to daven there? I do get a Hesoiros by davening at Kivei Tzaddik. There's no question. We know, by the way, the Chasam Sofer would visit Kvarim of Tzaddikim to be Mispalel. Rav Meir Shapiro would visit Kvarim of Tzaddikim to Mispalel. Kalev Ben Yefuna visited, Kever Avos. So yes, do I get a Hesoiros? I do. Is that the reason I go? No, it's not. I don't think it's the reason I go. I'm spending my life, teaching the Torah of these Gedolim. So the Torah is not just information. The Torah is not just facts. Okay. The Chavetz Chaim paskins like this. Rav Shlomo Zalman paskins like that. The Torah is a Torah's Chaim. It's a living Torah. You want to feel a connection to the Torah. You want the Torah to be meaningful to you. You want it to be coursing through your veins. So the least you could do is you want to know who these people are. So yeah, you could read about them, but
it further enables probably greater Torah study when one knows that what the Gemara is, who Rashi was. Yeah, no, perhaps.
Absolutely. Let's say, for instance, last summer we visited France, and I wanted to go to. I figured if we're going to visit Rashi, we might as well go on his yard site. I believe Chaf Tes Tamaz. So we visited Rashi. In preparation for visiting Rashi, I can't tell you how much research I did about the life of Rashi, the history of Rashi, the views of Rashi. There was a lashon in the Shita Mekubetzes who says Rashi, Rav Shlomo Yitzchaki, is Avihen v'Rabban Shel Yisrael. He's the father and the Rebbe of Klal Yisrael. You see those words, but then when you learn,
isn't that the acronym of Rashi, Rabban Shel Yisrael, is what they say?
Rabban Shel Yisrael. But when I saw that phrase, Va'avihen, the father, because actually most Ashkenazic Jews are direct descendants from Rashi. 8 out of 10 Ashkenazim are directly from Rashi.
Really?
I did, because back in the 11th century, there were only 10,000 Ashkenazic Jews. Rashi has a bunch of daughters.
Wow.
And
this is big news.
Yeah, most Jews come from Rashi. So studying about Rashi, learning about Rashi. Now when I learn Rashi, it's different. Rashi was an actual person. Rashi's not just someone who his words appear on the side of the page. Rashi was a living individual. Rashi was an actual personality.
Mm-hmm. Has the Rav heard of...
Back to the...
I'm sorry. Yeah, back. What were we getting back?
I was talking about the Ukraine. So I went to make a long story short. So I'm at the kever of the Taz, the Sma. There's a monument. There used to be an actual cemetery, but it was basically utilized. The area was utilized, and there's a monument with the names, the Taz, the Sma, the Shalom Eshiv, the Yeshuas Yaakov, and then there was somebody there, Rav Mordechai Tzvi Atinga. So at the time I didn't know who that was. So I come back to America. I'm giving a shiur that Friday. The topic of the shiur was, the Gemara says that the Beis Mikdash was destroyed because they didn't make Berachas HaTorah. So I see there's an amazing question of the Magen Gibayim. The Magen Gibayim asks, what do you mean they didn't make Berachas HaTorah? Okay, big deal. If you don't say Berachas HaTorah, b'diavad, post facto, you could utilize Avarabba. So big deal they didn't make Berachas HaTorah. But Avarabba...
The general approach would be the Ran there, correct? That there was some sort of lacking of the chashivas of it, perhaps, but...
Correct. But again, the question is, technically, they did make Berachas HaTorah, because even if they skipped Berachas HaTorah proper, they were saying Ahava Rabbah. And then I'm saying, who's the Magen Gebarim? I don't even know who the Magen Gebarim is. So I look it up. Yeah, Mordechai Tzvi Tinga. So
Wow.
I was literally just stood at his kever, and the next couple of days he's like, "Come here. You visited me. Let me pay you back."
It's
You know?
real. It's real.
Yeah, yeah. And I
Yeah.
have many, many stories like that. Really good ones.
Wow. 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 I once heard opinion from Rav Pam that a person should make a Jewish history Seder once a week. Has there ever heard that opinion?
If a person is learning properly, learning properly means they're not just learning. Okay, I'm going to learn now Alam Sugya. You know, Lumdus is very important. A person because Lumdus teaches you, trains you not just how to learn Gemara, but how to learn and how to observe and have a perspective on everything. As someone who's not a lamdan, you can have people are very intelligent, very bright. They can have very sophisticated jobs. They cannot analyze a world event or a situation unless they have what we called earlier mastered the approach of the Gemara. So Lamdus is very important. But Shas is not just Lamdus. Shas is halacha. Shas is agadata. And Shas is history. Well, what is Shas? Not to know the difference between Rav and Rava. I mean, Rav was the first Amoira. Rava is is a Basroi.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Shah, what is Gemara? Yeah, I wouldn't say you should sit down and have a seder. It's a wonderful thing. Sometimes I'll take out because I'm interested in something. But if somebody has a more broad approach to learning, it's almost organic.
Mm-hmm. I would give it just a shout out to a friend, but also someone who's a master of history. The way I picked up on my history was I listened to when I'm driving in the car. I listened to Rabbi Yehuda Geberer, Jewish history podcast, and you can pretty much just listen in your free time and pick up. Oh wow, I didn't know that. He saw him, met him, learned underneath him, and that's how the book that I'm learning right now. Yeah. Perhaps something I'm dying to ask the Rav. I hope it's not too far or perhaps an invasion of privacy, but the amount of shiurim the Rav gives makes me really badly want to know how to properly manage one's time and and I also know based on the Rav's Holy Shamish and Chashiva attendant, Rabbi Dr. Gedalia Schwartz of Norfolk, Virginia, that the Rav puts a significant effort in the preparation to the shir. He has testified that he has heard the Rav speaking out loud to himself, preparing the shir over and over. So then I think, when does the Rav ever eat? Or let's say for my own case, I want to go on vacation or do something. I want to play basketball during the day.
By the way, if you want to go on vacation, we're going on a really nice trip soon.
And if they buy now. So practically though, the time management thing is something that we have nothing more precious than our time. And how does the Rav properly do that?
You gave a shout out to my dear friend, Rabbi Dr. Gedalia Schwartz, who is a tzaddik, who is very dedicated to disseminating the shiurim, and I'm very grateful to him because he's been really helping me for 10 years. And Megalgal and Zechus Alidei Zakai. So I want to give Rav Gedalia tremendous yashar koach for all the help he's offered to me. And I have a number of chaverim that help me out. Rabbi Aaron Subar, who helps out with emails and then disseminating the links through the email. Also, Ish Tzaddik, and I have a friend, Rabbi Moshe Morgenstern, who helps out with the website. And what I said about one, goes for all of them. I have a friend, Rabbi Chaim Zeman, who also helps out with some of the platforms. These are all mamish tzaddikim, but time is our most precious commodity.
What happens if one doesn't have 4 holy henchmen to help them?
Oh, but honestly, the Oila al Kulana, I really do have to thank my wife, who really shoulders tremendous responsibility, so I could dedicate myself to the shiurim. Let's say yesterday, I have a Mishnah Berurah shir at 9:00. So my son's bus to Camp Aguda, it it was leaving 8:45 from the Kol State parking lot, like 8 minutes from here. But bus is running late. We look at the schedule. It's not leaving 8:45. It's leaving 9:15. So I could have pushed off Mishnah Berurah. My wife came, and she took my son to the bus. So
wow.
I want to share with you a few things. First of all, the Chidah writes in the Sefer Avodas HaKodesh, Ois Kufnon Gimel, Mi she'ena me'abed zman, yesh zman lakol. Someone who doesn't waste time, there's time for everything. Sometimes people they think, oh, this person probably doesn't sleep, they probably don't eat. No, I sleep, Baruch Hashem, I eat, Baruch Hashem. It's you have to make sure that the most valuable commodity is time. So this is one thing I learned. I saw once in a sefer from Rav Avigdor Yosef. Let's say you have to drive somewhere, right? You could either drive yourself, or you could pay someone to drive you. Now, it's expensive, but there are different things that could be bought in life. So a person always has to have the attitude. There's nothing more valuable than you could buy than to spend money to save time. So that's a guiding principle for me. If you could pay to get more time in your day, there's no better way to spend your money.
Wow. The most important thing. I mean, you see this in people that really are machshav of their time, wealthy people that have the ability to fly and airplanes that are private. The first thing they do, it seems like, is they value their time, and they enable that rather quickly. Perhaps they understand that. So a person should spend their money, step one, on buying time.
This is one thing I once saw from Rav Avigdor. Yeah.
I hear. How about this? This is also something that I know is on my mind. Perhaps it's on some other people's minds. The balance between one's own personal learning and the education of. It seems like one needs to be educated to educate, and the Rav gives a lot of lelamed, a lot of shiurim. Where would the Rav say that the balance is in one's own personal learning versus just teaching? Does the Rav learn by oneself, learn b'chavrusa, or it seems like a lot of shiurim? I guess we can just wrap up by the intrusive questions before we move on to the next topic, just with this, before I ask about what the Rav ate for dinner.
Yeah. So Rav Miller used to say that this was the greatest dilemma he had in his life. How much time to spend on one's own personal growth, and how much time one should spend on giving to others. So Rav Moshe famously would say,
Meiser.
There's an idea of Meiser, which, by the way, Chasam Sofer vehemently disagreed with. I want you to know. Yeah. Chasam Sofer vehemently disagreed with Rav Moshe's approach. And Rav Moshe vehemently disagrees with Chasam Sofer. There's a Chasam Sofer that says on Rashi, V'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha, zeh klal gadol b'Torah. So Chasam Sofer, what do you mean zeh klal gadol b'Torah? As opposed to what? Zeh klal gadol b'telephone book? Obviously, we're talking about the Torah. Amar Rabbi Kiva, v'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha, zeh klal gadol. What's b'Torah? No kidding, b'Torah. So Chasam Sofer says no. As opposed to in the physical world, you shouldn't love your friend like yourself. You have to love yourself more. Everybody knows that chayecha koidem, right? If you're going through the desert and you only with your friend, and there's only one cup of water, and it's either you drink it or he drinks it, you got to drink the water. You come first. It says Chasam Sofer. That's in the physical world, but in the Torah world, you got to give it up to your friend.
What?
You forego your personal growth to give it over to your friend.
He is chaluk. He argues and says you should give more than your 10% of your time. That's what the Chasam Sofer's opinion is?
Yeah, absolutely. Not only more, all. The Chasam Sofer seems to say, and I could send you, there's a lot of writing on the Chasam Sofer about this subject. The Chasam Sofer says, halacha l'maisa, if you're learning a masechta you never learned, and somebody comes to you to learn with you, Chasam Sofer says, you got to put your friend first. Teach him the masechta he never learned at your own expense. And the Chasam Sofer writes, because ultimately, if you do that, Hashem will be mashlim and he'll give you siyata d'shmaya that you'll grow personally as well. This is by the way, hashkafa throughout the writings of the Chasam Sofer, based on his Rebbe, the Hafla, that If the Rebbe is like a malach, that he's an oimed, he's not interested in his own growth, then learn from him. That the Rebbe has to, so to speak, put aside his own growth in order to teach the Talmidim. And Rav Moshe argues, Rav Moshe says it's not correct. Rav Moshe says, halacha l'maisa, if there's a masechta, if you're learning a masechta you never learned, and somebody wants you to teach them a masechta that they don't know, Rav Moshe says you're mechuyev first to learn for yourself. You're not allowed to teach it to him. Rav Moshe says the ikar olam haba is knowing the Torah. If you don't know the Torah, then you're going to be lacking. So Rav Moshe says he's bothered. If so, then why was Rabbi Preda rewarded for keeping on teaching the Talmud 400 times? Rav Moshe says that's a kasha on me. In my world, that's a kasha. Bishlam according to the Chasam Sofer. It's very good. Yeah, you're obligated.
Keep going.
Keep on teaching. You got to put your friend first. But according to Rav Moshe, you come first. So Rav Moshe must be that 10% of your time you have to give, and that was in the 10%. Meaning that Gemara forces Rav Moshe to create this idea of Meiser Zman. But the Chasam Sofer does not agree with that. And Rav Moshe's Shita is a Chidah, by the way. Rav Moshe's Shita is more in line with, let's say,
I saw Rav Avigdor Miller bring this Shita as well.
I
once, but at one of the Torah Avigdor. But why is it a Chiddush?
Put it this way: the Chovos Halevavos seems to learn that the main spiritual wealth is in Zechus Harabim. The Chovos Halevavos writes that even if a person dedicated their whole life to their own growth, how much could they grow already? It's a much smarter spiritual investment to diversify to as many people as possible, because the conglomerate merit will be much greater. So that seems much more in line with the Chasam Sofer than Rav Moshe. Furthermore, it's a very vast topic. It's a very vast topic. But here's what I think. I feel that if a person is not focused on their own growth, they will not be able to give over to others. Then they become very stagnant. They plateau, and what do you then you resort to saying stories that never happened, fluff. So in order for a person to be vibrant in the Torah that they teach, they have to be constantly growing. So this is what works for me. Now I like to use the shiurim as sort of a hechrach for I want to learn a certain thing, I want to grow in a certain area. So the thing is, life has its way of getting in the way. So the shear is a hechrach, where you're putting yourself in a situation where, okay, now you're going to have to learn the following in order to give it over. If I may, there's a famous question. Klal Yisrael's response to the giving of the Torah was Na'aseh v'nishma, right? We were willing to accept. So the famous question: why did Hashem have to coerce us to accept the Torah? Kaf aleim har kegigas. So there are various answers. Here's how I like to look at it. When I started out as a Rav, and I came out of Kollel, so remember when I was in Kollel, when you're in yeshiva, so they're Seder Matzah Shabbos. But once you get married and you're home, you want to learn Matzah Shabbos, but life has its way. Okay, Matzah Shabbos, you got to pay the bills, you got to put the kids to sleep, you have to clean up, and the learning was not the same. So when I became a Rav in a shul. I wasn't required to give shir Sunday morning, but I said, you know what? If I give shir Sunday morning, I'm gonna have to learn Matzah Shabbos. So I have a question. Did I want to learn Matzah Shabbos, or was I forced to learn Matzah Shabbos?
I'm going to go with the second one.
I wanted to learn. And because I wanted to learn, I put myself in a situation where I was forced. So I like to say, Klal Yisrael said, Na'aseh v'nishma, because they really wanted it so badly. They said, Hashem said, you really want it? Great. The only way to do what you really want to do is when you have no choice.
Wow.
So it's a way to grow in learning. Now, some people are extremely motivated, but there's no motivation like no alternative.
There's no motivation like no alternative. Burn the bridges. Burn the bridges. So we have to move forward. I remember I got that similar advice when I was thinking about giving my first share, where my first thought was that I'm a good for nothing, and why should I pretend to educate? I still need to keep learning. And the advice that, thank God, one person gave to me was, well, if you have to say something in front of people, you're gonna, like the Rav just said, you're just gonna find the time, and you're gonna really force yourself to learn. It actually became a minhag of mine now to, with this advice, even though I don't like public speaking or preparing these things, I go ask when I go home or when I go travel somewhere. I go up to the Rav and say, "Can I please give a drasha?" Even though it's awkward, but I'm from Virginia, so I guess you can be, if you're from out of town, you can get away with being awkward, I guess. But then it kind of forces me to overcome some of these worries and take the Rav's advice like this. Wow, that is a very helpful one, Rabbi. A lot of the people are gathering together because I told some individuals that there is going to be some advice given about the product that is taking over the world, and every single, let's say, 5 to 10 years, it seems like there is another product that takes over the world. The internet's, I think, only 30 years old, and then phones are only about maybe 10 or 15 years old. And then there comes something, a new leap that the Jewish people have to deal with, and now that seems like it's artificial intelligence, which is, interestingly enough, not really a new product. Google has been using artificial intelligence for quite some time to find the answers to one's problem. Tesla has been using it for time to self-drive cars. Businesses have been using artificial intelligence, but now artificial intelligence can perceive, synthesize, and infer, make decisions, create, build, and a person can really harness it to turn him into, your own personal assistant to do everything and do all of your jobs, make life kind of easy. And I don't know if that's a bad thing. It is just kind of on the forefront of the conversation. What should be the approach? Let's say it like that. What should be the Jewish approach towards this? Should one approach it cautiously, like it's raw, but maybe there's good? Should one approach it in a very, happy way? Let's see what this can do. Or perhaps there's something else. What would the Rav say about the all-new ChatGPT and artificial intelligence machine?
Look, again, it's amazing technology. It's already been able to discover certain cures for viruses that were until now not treatable, or certain antibiotics have been discovered through artificial intelligence. And like we mentioned with the technology in general, it's a tool. And every tool, you have to learn what are the objectives of it, what are its benefits, what are its pitfalls, and to use it wisely. A lot of the discussion, though, is, in a sense, you can ask artificial intelligence a question and it could gather an uncanny amount of information, sift through it, synthesize it, consolidate it, give you a nutshell of an answer. And the question is, how reliable is this information, halachically, hashkafically?
I imagine that one could just read through the information that it responds with and check. And, is there a halacha problem with it? I mean, before any hashkafa, which is perhaps more important or less important, whatever it is does it abide by the laws of the Shulchan Aruch? It seems like it does. What would the Rav say?
Again, is there a halachic problem? It's like any source of information. Can a person who doesn't know the halacha Google the question, is this permitted or asur, and then rely on it? Of course not. Absolutely not. Not only that, the Gemara in Horayos says that if, let's say, you're at a shir, and I just heard a shir on a topic, so I'm going to go ahead and do X, Y, and Z, and you rely on what you heard. That's not acceptable. You can't just rely on something that was said halachically in a shir. The shir was given for general educational purposes, but it wasn't given that you didn't ask a question, what should I do? And you were told under these circumstances, you should do X, Y, and Z. You're just sort of extrapolating based on what you heard on a shir. Moreover, let's say you go over to a Rav and you say, I was just wondering, what's the halach about this case? And you don't let the Rav know it's noigeya to you right now because, you're dealing with that situation. You're just like asking in general. And he gives you an answer and you rely on it and he didn't give you the right answer. You're not considered a shogeg, you're a mezid, because you never told the Rav, I don't know what to do right now. The only time you're allowed to rely on a halachic decision is if you go to a competent place and you say, right now, I want to know what to do. Could you please tell me what to do? Then the Rav will give it his full attention. He'll give it his full mind, his full heart. And that's a decision you could rely upon. But you can't just overhear, oh, I overheard, Pliny asking the rabbi a question. And if he told that to him, so it applies to me as well. So all the more so, you could use artificial intelligence to try to gather, please tell me the relevant shuvas on this shaila so that I could be better educated when I ask a paisek. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. That's like going to what's the difference between that and a guy reading an article about a certain subject. This is just another way of gathering information. But you can't rely on it halacha l'maisa the same way you can't rely on Google, the same way you can't rely on a shir given by a big Talmud Chacham halacha l'maisa.
So there's I haven't heard any contemporary Gedolei Olam ban it, at least in the Litvish world. I saw that some of the Hasidic masters were saying that it could have some hashkafa concerns. And
well, look, obviously it could have hashkafa concerns because when you're asking a question, well, how should we view this? So it's going to give you the opinion of the Orthodox and perhaps the conservative and the Reform and the secular world and the non-Jewish world. So yeah, that could be a problem if somebody does not know how to acclimate and digest different viewpoints and some of them may be antithetical to the Torah. So if you live in a Hasidic community, where it's a more insular community, where they're not exposed to other viewpoints, so of course they're going to ban ChatGPT. They're not getting a secular education. They're not exposed to what the world thinks about contemporary issues. So ChatGPT will probably be harmful for them. Somebody who grows up in a more open type of community, where even they go to traditional yeshiva, but they're a secular education, and maybe they're out in the workforce, and they know well many of the attitudes of the outside world. For them to check, okay, how would we view a certain halachic question? You can't say there's a halachic problem gathering information from artificial intelligence, but there would be a very fundamental problem to actually rely on a ruling, halacha l'maisa. The same way you couldn't rely, I don't know what the halacha is. I'm going to ask my friend who learned in yeshiva for 3 years. I know he learned here a day. I'm going to ask him a kashrus question. Okay, if he happens to get the question right and you relied on him, great. If he made a mistake, it's your problem. You weren't educated enough to know. You can't just ask someone who happened to learn in yeshiva. You need to ask a competent paisek.
So this is a personal fear that I have in one area, that when I'm done, whatever shiurim I upload or give, I pay, I'm going to fully incriminate myself, a service to artificial intelligence. It listens to it. It understands what it is. It gives it a title. It transcribes it, uploads it, and does everything. And it significantly saves time. And this otherwise would take hours and hours. And perhaps one issue that I found with it is I did inquire about having the service being taken care of by paying a company, a Jewish friend of mine, actually, someone who does this. They transcribe shiurim and they type them up, but instead I pay this company $50 a month and they do it all in one click of a button. Is there an issue? I mean, how in that?
Look, some of the human element of let's say you ask somebody who you're interviewing a hashkafic question, and the answer is not always yes or no. The answer is sometimes, there's an idea that some things may be permitted, but ein ruach chachamim noicha himenu, meaning the chachamim are not pleased with. So, if you ask your Rebbe a question, you're going to want to look at his facial expressions and see, okay, am I allowed to do this? Rebbe, I have to do this. I could do it, right? I mean, I have no alternative. So, and if you don't let me do it, the Rebbe goes, so what does that mean? Does that mean, yeah, you should do it? It's a big mitzvah to do it. So, yeah, obviously there are many, many nuances of expression, and that the human mind, the human ear has to hear the response, see the attitude, and if ChatGPT is going to sort of take out the pause or take out the or take out the slightest movement, you've now you've taken away some of the response.
It's not human or just the response. It's a better response. It's a better response. It's a more educated, chachma-filled, intelligent answer.
If what?
If you ask this question to the ChatGPT or whatever it is, you will get more chachma in the question.
No, I thought you were asking about editing. Using the editor to take out, let's say a lull in the action or a response or a certain.
I want that out, and
what?
I want that. I want that out, and it can even.
I'll give you an example. Let's say you ask, you ask somebody you interview a question, and before they give an answer, you see their body language, right? Where maybe there's a certain hesitation or a certain or maybe an enthusiasm. And that's taken out because, we don't want any pauses in the action. It's a better listen if it's more seamless or more snappy. So maybe you're losing, if let's say you were to interview someone who had a genuine Talmud Chacham and he gave an answer, and you're taking out some of the reaction before the response. So there might be something missing to the listener who they're.
But what about it really, that's not the concern I have as much. The concern is, it just feels wrong that I was paying a Jewish individual who does this full time, and this is his, and there was another individual who I'm friends with who's a fantastic artist, and her business is being shechted because you can do what she's doing by using ChatGPT in the art version or a different company and say, make me a beautiful castle of David HaMelech with a picture of Avram Avinu in front and do it in the tinge of blue and gold. And that takes 10 seconds. It just doesn't feel right. Or should the artists and these companies understand that they're in Gehaktat Tsaris and get up with the times?
Look, I mean, what exactly is the question? Obviously, there are many things that ChatGPT is mastering and making people obsolete. Be'ezus Hashem, your job as a podcaster hopefully is safe. You don't want the day where ChatGPT is going to be making their own podcast and interviewing other robots. So then we're both out of the waters. But
so nobody's safe. This is an inspiring message to the world.
No, nobody's safe, but a very important thing is that the transmitters of Torah, it's not a robotic activity. It's a human activity.
So I want to just close with this. I want this to really be the Rav has significant knowledge. It seems like the Rav is. Like I said before, I've listened to the shiurim. The Rav definitely understands the broad history of the Jewish people and this new advancements in technology and the difference that the Almighty has now given us this product. And I know the Rav has a very interesting perspective, a choice perspective on it. Can the Rav please deliver the message that the Rav thinks that artificial intelligence is here to do for the Jewish people?
Look, this is an idea that I remember I personally asked Rav Miller when I was a Bachar. If you notice, if you look in the Chumash, it never uses the word brain, mind. That word we'll never encounter, a chacham roish, a chacham moyach. It's
no
only
rosh,
lev.
no chacham roish,
no. You'll never see that. Chacham lev, v'lev kol chacham lev. Libi ra harbe chachma. Why is that? And I knew what he was going to say, but I wanted to be able to hear it myself. Where he said the following idea that, thoughts are fleeting. What you know is really not that important in the eyes of the Torah. It's how you feel about the knowledge that you have. This is what is called, Rabbi Yisrael Salanter would say, the greatest distance in this world is the space between the head and the heart. That's our main objective in this world, to bridge the gap between what we know and how we feel. Look, you ask any Jew, okay, do you believe that Hashem is watching you? Yeah, betach, of course. Okay. Do you believe that there's reward and punishment? Yeah, of course. That's one of the 10. Do you believe that if you're about to do the sin, God will remember that you did it? Yeah. Is he going to punish you? Yeah. Pal, why are you doing it? And Rabbi Salanter taught that what we know does not affect how we behave. Our mind, what we think, does not behave our action. It's only what we feel affects our action. This was the main contribution of Rabbi Salanter, how to bridge the gap between the mind and the heart. Look, Esav knew a lot of Torah. That's why his head is buried in the cave of the patriarchs, but not the rest of him. He had a good roish, but not the rest of him. It's about feeling what we know. This is what the Gemara refers to as deya. Deya. What's deya? Deya is a visceral feel to your knowledge. The Gemara says a Talmud Chacham that doesn't have deya, a carcass is better than him. What's deya? Rav Miller would explain that, there are many great people, they know the whole Shas, but what they know does not affect their behavior. You want the knowledge of the Torah to be coursing through your veins. I'll give you a little bit of an analogy. David HaMelech says, Va'ani, not mispalel, Va'ani tefillah. David HaMelech was so connected to tefillah that tefillah was not something he did. Tefillah personified who he was. Our goal in life is that the ideals of the Torah are not just things that we know, but should be coursing through our veins, should be our identity. That's who we are. And it's not enough to be repositories of information like a robot, like ChatGPT, like artificial intelligence. I would humbly assert that perhaps one of the lessons that we could learn from artificial intelligence is Hashem telling us, your knowledge has become artificial. I think a lot of us, those who are fortunate enough to know their grandparents, great-grandparents, there's a lot of learning today. Perhaps there's more learning today than in earlier generations. But our grandparents, our great-grandparents, their emunah was emunah chushes. They didn't just believe in Hashem. They felt Hashem's presence. They didn't just believe in the coming of Mashiach. They felt it as a reality. That's the objective in life. The objective in life is not to be ChatGPT. It should not to be artificial intelligence. To figure out ways how we could get what we learn in our mind to something that affects our hanhaga, who we are, our identity. We don't just want to daven. We want to be personified by tefillah. If somebody wakes us up in the middle of the night, we don't just learn Torah. We are identified, personified by the Torah. And that's a very important objective. And in that sense, artificial intelligence is very scary because we sometimes think to ourselves, are we just a bad version of artificial intelligence? Because think about it. What are we?
About chachma, if it's just about wisdom, ChatGPT would have more.
Yeah, they have the clear edge. If it's the whole question of, can you ask ChatGPT a question? That question, look how it reflects upon us. It reflects that in our minds, it's just about the information. But Torah is so much more than that. It's how we feel about that information. Is it meaningful to us? Is it real to us? So of course, we all know Hashem is watching us, but our avodah is, do we feel Hashem is watching us? We all know that there's certain things maybe we shouldn't look at, but when we have that temptation, is there something within us that I feel that I can't do this? So that's our objective.
So I learn Torah and I try. I go to Daf Yomi and I do all of that, but I need to be in a state of moving it down into my heart. V'yadata. I need to get it to V'hashivoisa Elvavecha. So how?
Oh, very good question. So if I may say, people say, I learned Daf Yomi. Reb Yid, that is so not enough to be a dedicated Jew. It's not even scratching the surface.
What do I need?
A few things. Number one, we live in a generation, everybody loves Chasidus today. I also do. Everybody loves Kabbalah. Everybody loves Machshava. A person must study Musar. A person must study Musar. A person has to learn Mesilas Yesharim.
That's safer specifically.
Yes. Chayvus Halavais. Shari Tshuva. Where there's an emphasis again and again and again on the basic tenets and fundamentals of the underpinnings of Yahadus. And this has to be a major part of one's study. It's not enough to learn Gemara, because you could have the information, and Rabbi Yisrael would teach that the Musar has to be studied in a certain way. A person has to learn it in an emotional way. Now, if somebody's not able to read these Svarim on their own, to go to a teacher, not who gives Musar, not say, oh, you're wrong. That's not what I'm referring to when I talk about Musar. I'm talking about the discipline of Musar, the study of Musar, the realm of Musar. There are many Svarim, Taimer Devaira, where there's a particular focus on the ethical aspects of the Torah, on the fundamental principles of the Amunah on the Torah. So that's very important.
So Musar study helps to get the Torah into the heart. That is one thing that's needed.
That's the objective. That's the purpose of Musar. Everybody knows, the Chavetz Chaim writes in Siman Aleph. Chavetz Chaim says that he doesn't say it's a chiyuv to learn Daf Yomi. He does say it's a chiyuv to learn Sifrei Musar. And that's something that, for myself, it's not necessarily the most glamorous topic, and it's not the most exotic and exciting, but it's the most important. Here's another thing. There's so much learning going on, and there's so many good venues to learn from. Everything is in English today. Art Scroll Revolution. You have shiurim on so many venues. But here's the thing. If your learning is relegated to svarim and computers, then it's just information in your head. But we're not robots and we're not computers. We're human beings. And you want the Torah to get into your heart and your soul. The only way to do that is from a Rebbe, from another human being who you have and a human connection with. Because then the Torah is not just being transferred into your brain. You know what it's like? If you're just learning from books, it's like you're taking a USB cord, you're taking the Torah anytime repository of information, you're plugging into your head. That's great.
That's
ain't
next.
Going into your heart.
That's next.
Yeah. Now it could be, look, if you have a Rebbe and you're learning over Zoom, right? And you have a relationship with the Rebbe, someone you could call, someone you could talk to. So then it's a living connection. And then when you listen to the shir, it's a living connection. And again, I'm not undermining the tools that we have. The Art Scroll is wonderful, but you must have a medium of a Rebbe, a Rav, some mentor, a Torah mentor in your life who you have a human connection with. So
Asay lecha Rav and learning Musar. That does it?
That is critical and very helpful.
So the takeaway from this episode, the Rav can correct me if I am wrong, but to learn how the Rav has organized the Rav's time. We learned a lot about the Rav's background and how the Rav juggles the responsibilities. We learned about the necessary help that one might need in order to facilitate the success. We learned about the importance of teaching Torah and not being someone who studies perhaps maybe more selfishly, but we're going to follow the opinion of the Chasam Sofer and give it all away to teach. And we learned that ultimately this ChatGPT thing teaches us a strong lesson in we are not glorified robots, and the acquisition of Chachma, even if it's Taras Hashem, may not be that productive or helpful if we don't push it down into the heart, which is done through the acquisition of a Rebbe and the study of Musar and a seriousness and a clarity in the Torah study with Chazara. Is that somewhat of a summarization?
Excellent executive summary of what we discussed, and halavai, we should be able to implement some of these ideas.
I thank the Rav for the time.
My pleasure. It was a great honor. Thank you very much.